Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show, with your host, the Anorak. It's time for another top list video. Don't think I've done one of these in a while now, mostly because I've been trying to think of a good subject for such. But now, it seems I've come up with one now. And it's kind of sort of relevant to music, so there you go. Specifically nostalgic music, theme tunes from the many films, TV programs, video games, etc. that we may have heard in our childhoods. Or at least in my childhood anyways. And hopefully someone else is out there. Whether we decide to play and listen to them, or even suddenly hearing them in our heads, they bring us back to a vague yet simpler time in our lives. Now obviously, being my list, it's mostly going to stir from my own experiences, my recollections, and of course, my opinions. Just letting you know in advance for sure. Oi, don't you mean our opinions? Yeah, sure. Anyways, sit back, relax, and prepare those rose-tinted nostalgia goggles, or rather, nostalgia earmuffs. This is the top 10 favorite childhood theme songs. And let's also hope that I don't get copyrighted by YouTube or whatever just by even possibly humming these tunes. Number 10, Thomas the Tank Engine and Tugs. Yeah, I know, first one on the list and already I got a tie. Just couldn't decide which of these I really could go with, but I went with both of them anyways. No surprise if you've seen my previous top list videos, since I'm kind of prone to just throwing in a tie or two anyways. But even still, listening to either of these themes do make me feel like a little cheeky kid again, which is probably why the Thomas theme in particular had been popular on the internet for some time, with memes and remixes to boot. Yes, seriously. However, the Tugs theme, on the other hand, is really underrated and I dare even say, kind of mature in its own right. Fitting since the series itself was, more often than not, more grounded and mature than Thomas and Friends had been. The Tugs song has that 80s vibe to it as well, along with that uplifting saxophone in it that just lifts up my spirit anytime. A really useful engine and a really useful tugboat, and two really good theme songs from two closely associated shows centered around anthropomorphic vehicles. Number 9, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. Yep, I'm specifically going with the ending credits song by the band The Spectrum, fitting name. It has that classy 60s jazz beat vibe to it, with those bellowing brass, the harmonic male vocals, and even that underlying alien-like synth or theremin or whatever, some kind of electronic instrument they used for here. I guess kind of fitting considering the alien nature of the Mysterons. Said vocals pretty much sum up the premise of the Super Marionations show and its titular hero, knowing the Mysteron's game and plans to conquer the Earth, and his key ability of regeneration and reviving after death. An indestructible man, as the song puts it. It's a bit like a kiddie version of a James Bond song, in a good way of course, on par with something like Danger Mouse for instance. I know most people are more familiar and more fond of fellow shows like Stingray and Thunderbirds and their iconic themes, and yes, I like those too, but if I really had to choose, this one I would go for. It's dramatic and has a bit of an edge to it. Spectrum is green, and this song is FAB. Number 8, Doctor Who. Which version of the theme? Any rendition of the classic, iconic, and beloved theme music is good in my musical book. Brought into being by late Australian composer Ron Grainer, who also worked on the theme music for programs like The Prisoner and Tales of the Unexpected, and the also late Delia Derbyshire, who was a member at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. And of course, the recent arrangement for the 2000s revival was done by Marie Gold, which is what I'm mostly fond of as well. Freshly updated, yet still sounding very distinct and familiar. Never tarnishing, taking away, or stagnating what made such music memorable and endeared to begin with and to this day. We may like Back to the Future, but if time traveling were to really have its own theme music, the Doctor Who theme song would most certainly be it. Number 7. Witch. Now here's an animated series that I'm hopeful that at least some of you out there might recognize or at least vaguely remember. I'm sure a lot of people back then would, or even today. I'm sure a lot of them are more familiar with something like Winx Club, for instance, another Italian franchise centered around magical girls, but I somehow gravitated towards Witch. Started out as a series of comics that would soon be adapted into TV animation, this series had suddenly gained a cult following, and I can understand why. It's kind of like Disney's Sailor Moon, although considering their tendency to buy anything and everything and then diluting such, I'm probably giving them ideas, aren't I? But I digress. This show actually has 2 opening theme songs, depending on which part of the world you may live in. In the United States, there's the cool punk pop rock theme We Are Witch, sung by Chelsea Sommer, or by Norwegian singer Marion Raven. Again, it kind of depends. Whilst internationally, including here in the UK, we get the more mystical sounding witch theme by Sabrina. Get it? Sabrina, witch, and this show's about teenager girls. Get it? Never mind. By the way, does anyone else actually remember Sabrina the animated series? Boy, was my childhood weird. Anyways, both witch themes are pretty good in their own ways, conveying the franchise and its general premise, even with somewhat of a difference in tone and mood. Number 6. Huntic, Secrets and Seekers. Speaking of Winx Club, here's another show from the same people who made that, no less. I was introduced to this Huntic show several years ago by an old college friend of mine, and after managing to stream and watch the whole thing in a 2-episode-a-day marathon, I like to thank her for introducing me to this underrated series, and its equally underrated opening theme song, which had suddenly got me hooked from the very start. At least for the most part. Sure, it definitely took some time getting used to, just letting you know in advance. But I'm already a big sucker for big, bombastic, and high-energy rock music, as well as those anime-style openings. So this was certainly up my kind of alley. Its lyrics are simple and straightforward, vaguely going into the very spirit and core of Huntic. Facing the darkness, all for one and one for all. Let your heart be fearless, so on and so forth. Like Witch, it's mystical, but it's also very modern, which again fits the urban fantasy elements of the show. It's pumping and mystifying. Shout it out, make it loud, everybody hunt it go. And let's just hope that Netflix ever got the rights to this IP, that they don't butcher it like they did with Winx. In fact, let's not give them any ideas at all. You and me both, mate. You and me both. Come at us, bro. Number 5. Digimon. Yep, if you really think the Pokemon theme song is good, and it kind of is, but this here is double the awesomeness. That sick electric rhythm and almost roboticness of some of those vocals really fit the whole digital nature of the franchise about cute little Tamagotchi-like virtual pets that could transform into these big, powerful kaijus, mechas, dragons, angels, and the like, that even the most legendary of Pokemon would probably be put to shame. And then there's that Bowie-esque voice singing about them changing into digital champions to save the digital world. Just purely epic. Now, I'm talking about the English dubs theme that was used for Adventure, Adventure 02, and Tamers. The original Japanese versions of these shows also have some good themes worth mentioning as well. One, of course, being Butter Slash Fly by the late great Koji Wada, and my personal favourites being Braveheart, the song that would play during the Digivolution sequences, and My Tomorrow, the song that would play during the ending credits for the first few episodes of Tamers. I also kind of like the Digimon Frontier theme as well. Sure, it does sort of de emphasize the digitalness of the original classic theme in favor of a more poppy, tribal kind of sound, but I have a soft spot for that too. So, yeah, these classic Digimon themes are nostalgic, catchy, and all around prodigious. As long as they don't have any rapping on them, of course. I'm good. What? No rapping? Dude, what are you on? The Digirap is the most prodigious thing ever! Yeah, you'd think that, would you? Digimon Digital Monsters. They're the champions, musical champions. Number 4, Action Man. Specifically, the 2000 series from Mainframe Entertainment. Now, I know about the 90s series and it has some good music too, but the opening song from 2000 really beats and blasts. The theme was composed by Paul Gordon, who also did the Digimon theme, and it still really shows just as well here. It's short, but it's also packed to the punch with heavy rock and electronica, and those manly vocals chanting Action Man and his catchphrase Amp It Up. Does hearing that just make you feel pumped up for something? Because it suddenly does for me. America's G.I. Joe may have some good catchy musical jingles, but Britain's Action Man? We blow that out of the water. Yeah, definitely agree on that. There is a reason why they call it Team Extreme! Speaking of, what about Atom? Atom? You know, Alpha Teens on Machines. Oh, that. Oh, I don't know, I barely remember that. Of course you would. Whatever. Action Man. Greatest hero of them all, also one of the greatest theme tunes of them all. Check it out, dial it in, amp it up. Number 3, Transformers. Again, which one? Hard to say. There are certainly memorable ones. I'm sure a lot of you are fond of the classic G1 cartoon and its few various opening themes, and most certainly Lion's rendition in the opening credits of the 1986 animated movie, or perhaps Beast Wars with its tribal rock music fitting the beastly motif, or even Beast Machines, which pretty much uses Fat Planet by Left Field. Which is awesome, by the way. More kids shows need to use more Left Field and other English electronica music. The Orb, Orbital, Prodigy, Aphex Twin, Fatboy Slim, Basement Jacks, Chemical Brothers, Groove Armada, Propellerheads, etc., etc. But for me, I'm more fond of most of the later shows and their themes, like Armada, Cybertron, Animated, and Prime. Armada, with its fresh rock style approach yet still sounding familiar jingle, likewise with Cybertron, which I'm kind of surprised has been made into a meme in recent years as well, and its electronic house club inspired rendition by underrated DJ Paul Oakenfold. Anime's musical rendition by Jellyfish band member Andy Sturmer, who also worked with the likes of Puffy Amiyumi, and Sebastian Evans II, who also did the theme for Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. Again, anyone else remember that show as well? I certainly did. Well, we certainly do remember. Well, of course we do! One of the best cartoon shows about kids and robots, alongside Robot Boy and My Life as a Teenage Robot. Also, don't you forget to mention Transformers Energon and its equally tubular theme. Do you remember the theme song for Transformers Energon? Or for that matter, do you remember anything from that show? Well, of course I do. The Transformers Energon in disguise. Misha's kind of cute though. I thought so. And yeah, Misha is kind of cute. More tolerable than Kicker Jones, that's for sure. And lastly, there's the Prime music score, composed by Brian Tyler, who actually had done a lot of soundtracks for many feature films and Hollywood blockbusters, so he knows his stuff. Even here, where it's clear that he's trying to emulate Steve Jablonsky's score from the live action Bayformers. Whatever the case may be, I think these four here are probably among the best that this beloved toy franchise centered around shape-shifting alien robots who mostly disguise themselves as vehicles, animals, and other objects has to offer in terms of music. Transformers, more than meets the eye, or rather in the case of its music, more than meets the ear. Number 2, Godzilla. Now, this is a very tricky one because there have been so many themes, leitmotifs, and variations over the years, possibly more so than Transformers or even Doctor Who. One of the best and most recognizable, of course, being that classic and dramatic military march that goes all the way back to the first film from 1954. Other memorable themes, in my opinion, include the brass introduction from 1964's Mothra vs. Godzilla, that you can imagine represents the titular gorilla whale kaiju marching into view, and that jazzy tune from 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which I think has an audible tick-tock clock sound to it as a beat, I guess to emphasize the clockwork or mechanical nature of the film's titular opponent. Then there's BioWars from 1989's Godzilla vs. Biolante, a funky disco rock piece that somehow manages to incorporate part of the Godzilla music as well. The main title theme from 1993's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, with its stoic brass and percussion, and the title sequence for Final Wars, which remixes the Godzilla March theme into electronic extravaganza. And by the way, that film features music also composed by Keith Emerson himself. Can you believe that? Persecution of the Masses from 2016's Shin Godzilla is also really good, composed by Shiro Sagisu, who also did the music for Neon Genesis Evangelion, also made by the minds of Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi. Small universe, eh? Too small. And I even like the MonsterVerse music scores as well. Even Harry Jackman's Kong Skull Island score, and especially 2019's King of the Monsters, in which composer Bear McCreary manages to perfectly update some of the familiar and iconic music. Even the Mothra theme song, can you believe that? Each and every one of the Godzilla films and media have at least something of value to offer, and that most certainly includes the music as well. Hey now, before you get to number 1, shouldn't you provide some honourable mentions first? I know I can think of a few myself. Yes, I was about to, in fact. Avatar: The Legend of Aang. Bit tricky with this one since its intro mostly consists of narration from Mae Whitman as Katara, but the music behind it, if not the overall musical score of the series, is just fantastic, mixing Eastern and Western musical traits and instrumentations to create something truly otherworldly and yet so relatable and representative. Ben 10. I'm sure most people may be more fond of later shows like Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and maybe even Omniverse, but I think I like the original best. It's simple, catchy, and it screams 2000s. Duckwing Duck and Gargoyles. 2 classic 90s Disney cartoons for the price of one. The first with its funky, spy-esque theme fitting the superhero nature of Darkwing Duck, and the second with its dark, brooding theme. They're the terrors, that defenders that flap in the night. They're the earworms that will never leave your head. They are Darkwing Duck and the Gargoyles. Inspector Gadget, another very simple yet unbelievably catchy theme tune. Something to make any kid bop along to it before the episode starts. As they say, less is more. And I even have a bit of a soft spot for Gadget and the Gadgetinis and its own theme tune. Again, anyone remember that Gadgetini show? I think it deserves better love. Jace and the Wheeled Warriors. 80s TV cartoon theme music at its finest. This and Inspector Gadget theme were both done by Shuki Levy, who had made music for a lot of shows in the 80s and 90s. Too many for me to even count up. Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Hey, 2 DC cartoons for the price of one, huh? These are among the best superhero shows out there, and they have some of the best theme songs ever put to a TV series about superheroes. These two were the Avengers theme before the Avengers theme. Whether it's the cinematic symphony of JLA or the epic rocking of Unlimited, they're pretty much DC's national anthems. Kim Possible. Yep, this theme song is just as suave and high-tech as the show itself and its titular heroine. Sure, it may fit the standard 2000s Disney teen pop music mold, but it manages to stand out and hold up even after so many years. Mummies Alive. Seriously, does anyone actually remember this show too? I know I keep asking that with all these things, but I'm just saying. This was my generation's Gargoyles. It should have deserved another chance, and it has a good theme song to boot. Ruby. Say what you may about the series and whether or not it's gone on much longer than it might have needed to be, the music is just awesome, especially of course the opening songs for each of the volumes. This Will Be the Day, Time to Say Goodbye, Let's Just Live, Triumph, and so on. Casey Lee Williams is such a wonderful and beautiful talent, and she's only like a year and a half younger than me. How crazy is that? I also definitely recommend checking out her band, OK Goodnight. Spectacular Spider-Man. Okay, so I've talked about 2 DC shows so far, so how about a Marvel one? And I'm sure many people would agree this is definitely one of the best theme songs. I know some may be familiar with the classic 60s Spider-Man theme, but this one definitely feels like a more modern alternative. Stingray and Thunderbirds. Again, like I said, I do enjoy these theme songs, I really do, including the Marina song that plays at the credits of every Stingray episode. It's just that I enjoy the Captain Scarlet theme a little bit more. The Batman, the 2004 series. Yet another DC cartoon, of course, and honestly an underrated Batman show in my opinion. Though again, it may be my nostalgia lens talking. This show, in fact, had 2 theme songs, much like which. Series 1 and 2 had a chilling yet groovy tune by David Howell Evans, aka The Edge of U2 fame. Yes. And Series 3 and 4 had a more energetic tune by Andy Sturmer, whom I've already mentioned. Whether you like either one more than the other is a matter of opinion. But as for me, I enjoy both. They each capture an aspect of mood and tone that the beloved Dark Knight and Creep Crusader entails. What's New Scooby-Doo? Yes, I know many people love the classic Scooby-Dooby-Doo theme song, and I certainly do as well. But this was the show about the famous mystery gang that I grew up with. And the opening theme song was done by, of all bands, Simple Plan. Yes, that Simple Plan. I know it tries to be hip and edgy and all that, it may come across as such, but that kind of becomes the charm of it. That early 2000s alternative pop punk rock sound. It's cheesy, but it's my kind of cheese. And it's at least better than that Velma show, that's for sure. Yes, I said it. Again, come at me, bro. Wii Sports. No, seriously. If you have an old Nintendo Wii console and that sports game somewhere in a shelf or drawer or wherever, put it on, go on like one of the menus or whatever, and just listen to some of the music that play in it. It'd either be fun and upbeat or soothing and emotional. I especially like the golf, tennis, baseball, and bowling music. Zoe 101. Yes, I confess, I may have watched Zoe 101 back in the day. It was between stuff like SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Drake and Josh, and iCarly, so I kind of stuck around through this thing. And honestly, I have a soft spot for this opening song. It has that laid back yet adventurous vibe to it, kind of like the show itself was, which is why it's on the honorable mentions as well. And certainly not because of Dan Schneider and his weird foot fetish that even Quentin Tarantino would be put off by. And finally, number one, Halo. Of course, picking number one was a feat far easier said than done ever for me. But ultimately, I think the Halo franchise wins out here. Not only its iconic theme, but pretty much a good chunk of the soundtracks as a whole. Too many tracks and remakes of tracks to even bring up here. Ghosts of Reach, Unforgotten, Peril, Earth City, Shadows, just to name a few. Of course, I have to bring up that iconic main theme that especially predominated the original classic trilogy, with its build-up, otherworldly choirs, tribal drums, and rocky strings, all thanks to the minds and efforts of Michael Salvatore and Martin O'Donnell. My favourite of the classic Halo theme in particular would probably be the Mjolnir mix for Halo 2, mostly since that was the first Halo game that I played and it did indeed get me into the very franchise itself. Featuring a thrilling guitar by Steve Vai, and it's beyond fantastic. Like with Godzilla and Transformers, the soundtracks in each of the Halo games and other media have at least something to offer. I even like the score for Halo 3 ODST, where it definitely and deliberately has that jazzy film noir detective style, which fits the game in particular just perfectly. Yeah, I can definitely agree on that too as well. Even ODST, which was the last best Halo game in my opinion. Everything after that kind of went down here, really. Really? You don't have any consideration for Halo Reach and its soundtrack, as well as gameplay and storylines? That game from all the way back in 2010? Oh, wait, let me guess. The 2000s, man! Apart from both of it being just two of many parts of the story watcher guy, how do I live with him? I could go on and on about these soundtracks, but honestly, I really recommend checking them all out, whether here on YouTube or elsewhere. Even if you're lucky enough to have any of them on CD, play them and see if the nostalgia hits you, with so much excitement and positivity as they did for me. In fact, all these music across the top list, even in the honorable mentions, have at least some room and place in my heart. And I'm fairly certain that at least some of them have in yours too. And that's pretty much it for this little top list, and I certainly hope you enjoyed it, or at least tried. And maybe you found a theme song here that you might remember fondly from your childhood, or suddenly remembered. Maybe my overall opinions on these might adjust a little bit every now and then, but here you go. If there's any other theme tunes that I might have missed, feel free to show them in the comments below and talk about why you like them. Next time, we actually talk about an album again, and possibly a well-known one at that, by the man in the rain, far above the clouds himself, Mike Oldfield.